Okay, so remember that, and again, I will actually give you these reference triangles in a, that was kind of terrible. It won't let me undo it. Okay, so this is a, suppose that's a 45, 45, 90. Remember that the side lengths are 1, 1, and square root of 2, or x, x, x root 2. And then in a 30, 60, 90, it's the short leg is your 1 or your x, the long leg is the root 3 or x root 3, and then the hypotenuse is 2x. Okay, so there's a few of these problems down here. So remember that in a 45, 45, 90, the legs are congruent, so that one obviously is 5 root 2. And then if you want to write on the diagram, remember this is like your 1, and your root 2. So that means to go from the leg, one of the legs to the hypotenuse, you're going to be multiplying by root 2. And then when you multiply 5 root 2 by root 2, the square root of 2 and the square root of 2 multiply to give you the square root of 4, or just 2. So that'd be 5 times 2, which is 10. So this length would be 10. Okay, on a 45, 45, 90, where you have a hypotenuse given, again, if it's helpful to do 1, 1, root 2, like that, to help you remind yourself of what you're doing. You're going from the hypotenuse back to the legs. So we would be dividing by square root of 2. So 4 root 10 divided by square root of 2. What is the fastest way to simplify that?
Multiply it by root 2.
Okay, you can do that. That's not the fastest way though. It's okay to do that. You can multiply the top and the bottom by root 2, but there's an easier way. We haven't really done a lot of these, but this could save you time on some of the problems. Square root of 10 over square root of 2. What do you think that is?
Square root of 5.
Square root of 5. So basically, if you think of the square root of 10 as being the square root of 5 times the square root of 2, let me not write it that way. Let me do this. So kind of in my head, I'm just sort of thinking of this like square root of 5 times square root of 2, and then that will divide out the square root of 2 on the bottom. So anytime that you have numbers in here that can be simplified, like just as a normal fraction, if one is a multiple of the other, you can just divide those out underneath the radical sign. Okay, and then that would be 4 root 5. So just remember that these legs are what you would need so that when you multiply by square root of 2, you get 4 root 10. Okay, so 4 root 5 times root 2 is 4 root 10. I will go ahead and do the other way of rationalizing, and it'll be the same thing, but just kind of show you what the difference would be. So if you have 4 root 10 over root 2, and you multiply the top and the bottom by root 2, you'll get there. It'll be the same answer. It's just a little bit more work. So if you do it this way, you're going to have 4 square root of 20 over 2, and then you have to break down the square root of 20. So it would go 4, and then that's 20 is 2 root 5 square root of 20. Okay, so that'd be 4 on the outside, 2 root 5 on the inside over 2, and then the 2's would cancel out, and it would give you 4 root 5. Okay, so you'll end up at the same place, but obviously it's a lot faster to just divide root 10 by root 2. So either one of those is okay, but there's kind of a quick way and then a longer way. Okay, so that's the 45, 45, 90s. For the 30, 60, 90s, remember everything is based on the short leg. So if you know the short leg, you multiply by square root of 3 to get to the long leg, and you multiply by 2 to get to the hypotenuse. But the first thing you always want is the short leg length. Okay, so if we have 8/3 on the hypotenuse, again, I'm going to write the side lengths. The short leg is your 1, the hypotenuse is 2, and the long leg is √3. And so when you go from the hypotenuse back to the short leg, you're dividing by 2. 8/3 divided by 2 is the same thing as multiplying by a half. Right? You're taking half of the hypotenuse, which is kind of an easier way to think of it when you're dealing with a fraction like that. Okay, so half of 8/3 would make that 4/3. So your short leg is 4/3. Again, the number that you would multiply by 2/1 to get 8/3. And then your long leg, we're multiplying by √3. You could write that as 4/3 √3, or I usually will write it like 4√3/3. Either one of those is okay. All right, but when you have a fraction and you're doing a division, it's the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal. So for this last one, that's a 30, 60, 90, again, the short leg is your 1, the hypotenuse is your 2, and the long leg is your √3. Again, on the quiz, there will be the reference triangles will be given, so you don't even have to memorize those, you just have to know how to use them. Okay, and so from the short leg is what we need, right? So from the long leg to the short leg, we're going to be dividing by square root of 3. Now this one we'll need to rationalize because there's no way to divide out. Those two cannot be canceled. So we'll just do rationalizing. So we'll multiply the top and the bottom by √3. So that's 8√6/3. Now again, you always want to look and make sure that that's simplified completely. So it is, because 2 times 3 doesn't break down. 8√6/3. And then when you multiply that by 2, something you need to be careful about is if you have 8√6/3 and you multiply by 2, you're multiplying the top by 2, but the bottom doesn't change, right? It's 2/1. So when you multiply by 2, you're actually getting 16√6/3. So the tops are multiplying, the bottom is just being multiplied by 1. If you multiply the top and the bottom by 2, what would end up happening is you have 16√6/6, and then the 2 would have divided out and you'd be back where you started. Okay, so just be careful when you're doing the multiplying. You need to make sure that you're only multiplying the top unless you're rationalizing. When you're rationalizing, you're going to multiply the top and the bottom by the same thing because you're multiplying by 1. But when you're actually trying to multiply by √2 or multiply by √2 by √3 or by 2, you need to make sure that you're just multiplying the top. That would be your final answer for that one. Okay, the last one of that kind is combining 45, 45, 90s and 30, 60, 90s. So we want to kind of break this down into 2 separate triangles. We're looking for the hypotenuse of the 30, 60, 90. We're given the hypotenuse of the 45, 45, 90. So I'm going to go ahead and write on the triangle the little numbers that go with the sides. With the 45, 45, 90, it's a 1, 1, √2. And with the 30, 60, 90, it's a 1, root 3 on the long leg, and then 2 on the hypotenuse. Okay, so we're going to go from the hypotenuse to one of the legs by dividing by root 2. And then again, that one's going to have to be rationalized because you don't want to leave a root 2 on the bottom. So 5 root 2 over 2. Now that's the length of both of those legs. So that's the short leg in the other triangle, which means to go from the short leg to the hypotenuse, we're going to do 5 root 2 over 2 and then double it. But again, make sure you're multiplying by 2 over 1. You're not multiplying by 2 over 2, you're multiplying by 2 over 1. You can either cancel the 2 right there, or you can multiply it and then cancel it. Okay, it'd be 10 root 2 over 2, which is 5 root 2. Any questions on special right triangles, any of those problems? I'll leave that there for a second if you missed something. I know I'm going kind of quickly, but that's because all the stuff is review and I don't want to make you sit and watch me do problems slowly that most of you are good with. Any questions on 1 through 5? Okay. The last problems that we're going to do are some trig problems. So again, you're going to be given the sine is opposite of hypotenuse, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent is opposite over adjacent. All right, so not so like SOHCAHTOA, but just so. I say so a lot, and I didn't realize that until I started recording. So I say okay and so all the time. Okay, so on this problem, we have the angle that's given is 20 degrees. And according to that, our hypotenuse is always, again, the longest side across from the right angle. So that's your hypotenuse. Be careful on this kind, because remember, the triangle doesn't have to be sitting on one of the legs. It could be sitting on the hypotenuse, which it is in this one. So in relation to the 20 degrees, that would be your opposite side leg. So that means that this one is your adjacent leg. So that means that we're going to be doing cosine. So the cosine of 20 degrees is equal to the adjacent 14 over the hypotenuse, which is x. So reminder, when the x is on the denominator, we need to multiply both sides by x to get it out of the bottom. So it'll look like that. And then what you'll be typing into the calculator is 14 divided by cosine of 20. Divided by cosine 20. And again, you want to make sure your calculator's in degree mode. It's about 14.9. Let's see if I told you what to round to. Yeah, round to the nearest 10. So x is approximately 14.9. And if there was a label on there like centimeters or whatever, you'd want to make sure you put that. I haven't written the quiz yet, but it's probably going to be mostly multiple choice, which should be easier in terms of expressing your answer. But of course, the wrong answers will be there also. So you still have to be careful. Okay, that one also is cosine. So the difference with this one is, so we have 33 degrees. We have our adjacent and our hypotenuse. But this time when you do cosine 33, you have the variable on the top. That's a little bit easier. We can just multiply by 10 and we'll be done. So multiply both sides by 10 and type that in the calculator. 10 cosine 33 to the nearest 10th is about 8.4. Okay, what do you do for 8 and 9 where you're given the side lengths and you're looking for the angle measure? How do you find an angle measure in a right triangle when you know the side lengths?
Um, like the invert, yeah, inverse.
Okay, so we're going to start with, I'm just going to call that x there. Start with, let's see, this is your hypotenuse, and that's your opposite. So that means you'd be doing sine. Okay, so the first thing I want you to write is the sine of, and this time the variable is your angle. Right? The sine of x is equal to the opposite 42 over the hypotenuse 58. And then you're doing inverse sine. So because we're looking for the angle measure, we're going backwards and doing inverse sine. Okay, so inverse sine of 42 over 58. And so when you type in the calculator, you're going to get your second sine, 42 divided by 58. Rounded to the 10th. Okay, this one said nearest degree. So it's like 46.39, 46.4. So to the nearest degree would be 46 degrees. Sorry. Okay, I'm frozen. X is 40, what did I say, 46? 46 degrees. It won't let me erase or move. Okay, looks like we're done with that. I can write, I can't do anything else. Okay, so you need to do the last problem yourself. And then, again, this was put into Schoology as an assignment, so just submit that when you're finished. So does anybody have any questions about problems from chapter 11 homework? Is there anything over examples on volume and surface area or anything?
Yes.
What?
Can you the um the pyramids and the hexagonal, like the on the review, it's the third one and the last one.
Are you looking at the review? This was the one that's due today, I think.
Yes.
Is that what you're talking about? Okay.
Yes.
So this one, somebody has just arrived. Oh, look, it's Abby. Okay.
I don't think that's ours.
Okay, maybe this is the one that I assigned for today. Hold on a minute. Let me. I'm getting a little confused because of your assignment versus honors assignment. So the one that is due for today. Gotcha. Okay. So I was actually looking at the answer key for the one that's assigned today, I think.
Mm.
So oops. Let me pull that in case I can't find the answer key here. Okay. So the one that's due, let me make sure is 64. And that's this one, right? So you're talking
Yeah.
about, okay. So you're talking about on the second page, the top left and the bottom right.
No, on the first, it's on the first page, the bottom left, and then the second page, the bottom right.
Gotcha. Okay. So this is having problems importing. Okay, looks like I'm just going to want to talk through this. I think Notability just started uploading, so I mean updating, backing up, so it's acting funky. Okay, you were saying this one? Sir Jonathan, did you say the one on the lower left of the
Oh, yes.
Okay. All right. So I can't write on this because I'm not in Notability. I'm just looking at the answer key that I posted. So this is what's due today, but the answer key is in today's folder. So if you haven't checked that yet, that's there, but you want to make sure you submit today's homework. So you're given on the pyramid, when it's a square, that means that if um, on this one you have a 30, 60, 90, and that little segment there is going to be half of a side length. So the short leg of the 30, 60, 90 will be half of the side of the square. So we're doing 10 divided by 2 to get 5. And then the actual side length is 10. Oh, sorry, no, that's the long leg. Okay, so the long leg is 10. So the short leg divided by root 3 is going to give you 10 divided by root 3 is 10 root 3 over 3. And then when you double that to get the side length, it's 20 root 3 over 3. Okay, so that's right here. So the long leg to the short leg, we're dividing by root 3 and then doubling that to get the hypotenuse of the 30, 60, 90. Okay, and then again, that's going to be the same as the side length of the square because it's 10 root 3 over 3 that's been doubled. Okay, so for the perimeter, there's 4 20 root 3 over 3s, which is 80 root 3 over 3. And then the height is 10. The slant height was 20 root 3 over 3. That's the green amount in the 30, 60, 90. And then the base area down here, it's a square. So when you multiply 20 root 3 over 3 times 20 root 3 over 3, you're going to get 400 over 3. Okay, so this one's hard just because of all the radical stuff, but do those numbers make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, for the lateral area, it's 1/2 the perimeter times the slant height. So 1/2 of 80 root 3 over 3 times 20 root 3 over 3. Okay, so you just divide out that 2 from either the 80 or from the 20 and simplify that, and it'll be 800 over 3. And then since it's a pyramid, we're going to have to add on the area of one of the bases. So the base area being 400 over 3 means you're adding that on and getting 1200 over 3, which is 400. So this is the lateral area plus the base area. Lateral area plus base area. And then for volume, base area times the height and then divided by 3. So the base area was 400 over 3. The height is 10. And you're taking a third of that product. So 1/3 base area times height is 4,000 over 9. and that will not simplify. Sir Jonathan, is there anything specifically that I didn't explain that you want me to go over, or is it just getting through all the radicals and fractions?
I think it was just getting through all the radicals and fractions.
Okay. I don't think you'll see anything quite this complicated on the quiz. You are going to have to show work on problems, even if they're multiple choice. But I don't think you're going to see anything quite that involved. It would probably be more like the calculations that you'd see on these problems. Okay. Let me see if I can get it in Notability yet. Nope. For the last problem, that's also a pyramid. And again, you're going to be given the formulas. So that table right there will be given, so you don't have to memorize those formulas, which is super helpful. Hopefully you feel that. Okay, for the hexagon, so to find the slant, let's kind of start at the beginning here. Okay, so this is a hexagonal pyramid. So the base is a hexagon. The perimeter will be 6 on a side times 6 sides, so the perimeter is 36. Okay, the height is 11. The height is just the perpendicular from the vertex of the pyramid down to the base of the center of the base. So the height's 11. The slant height is that blue segment. So the slant height is actually formed with the right triangle that has the 2 red segments and then the blue segment that's standing up inside the pyramid. So that's this triangle right here. Okay, the height's 11. And we need to know that other leg there so that we can do the Pythagorean theorem and figure out the slant height. So the slant height is going to come from finding that little red segment that's in the hexagon there. That's called the apothegm. We didn't talk about that term, but that segment would be the height of one of those little triangles. So if you take the hexagon and divide it into 6 parts, okay, what we need is the area of that little triangle. So we need the height of that little triangle, and we also need the height of that little triangle to be able to do the right triangle that's standing up inside. So when you take that will be an equilateral triangle because it's a hexagon. So 360 divided by 6 would be 60 degrees. So that's the big triangle there that triangle is an equilateral triangle. So since the side length is 6, that means that the short leg, when you drop the altitude, you'll have a 30, 60, 90 here. And this leg is half of the side length. The side of the hexagon was 6, so the short leg is 3. The hypotenuse would be 6, the long leg would be 3 root 3. Now, the 3 root 3, we needed to find the area of the base, okay, which is 1/2. The base is 6, so doing the area of that triangle, right? 1/2, the base is 6, the height is 3 root 3. And then after you find that triangle, you have to multiply by 6 because there's 6 triangles. Okay, so 6, 1/2 base height will give you 54 root 3. So that's where those numbers are coming from. Okay, and then to do the lateral area, it's 1/2 the perimeter times the slant height. And so to find the slant height, we need Pythagorean theorem on the triangle again that would stand up inside of the pyramid. So that'll be 2 root 37 on that hypotenuse. That's the blue segment right there is 2 root 37. Okay, so 1/2 perimeter times slant height is 36 root 37. And then for the surface area, we're just going to add on one of the base areas, which was 54 root 3. But those cannot be combined because they're not like radicals, so just that weird looking answer. Okay, and then for the volume, it'll be 1/3 base area times the height of the pyramid. Base area is 54 root 3. Height of the pyramid is 11, and you're taking 1/3 of that. So 198 root 3. Okay, and again, I know there's a lot going on in that problem. You're not going to see anything that is that involved on the quiz. Okay, so you might need to find like the slant height doing the Pythagorean theorem, but it wouldn't be combined with the other radicals. When I put that problem on there, I didn't realize it would be quite that involved. Okay, any other problems you want me to talk through or questions about volume surface area in general? Remember that the way you find bases in a prism is the congruent and parallel faces. So like, for example, on that trapezoid, the height of the trapezoid is 3 because it's the distance between the two bases, which are the trapezoids. The trapezoids are the bases because they're parallel and congruent, and it's not sitting on its base. It's sitting on one of the lateral faces. So the height is actually from the front to the back, like horizontally measured because the bases are the trapezoids. It could be the same thing with cylinders or any other shape. The cylinder does not have to be sitting on one of the circles. It could be sitting, I don't have any of those, but like, yeah, on this one, that prism is also not sitting on a base. The height of that prism is 8 because it's the distance between the two hexagonal bases. I think I put a problem that's like that, but with different numbers on it on today's homework. Okay. Questions on surface area volume. If you mess up something like on this one, if you mess up the perimeter or the height, it's going to throw off everything else. So just be really careful when you're doing the calculations from the beginning that you identify the base and the height correctly and that you find the base area correctly. So again, if this is a multiple choice problem, you know, I would like ask you to show me all those steps, but then at the end, you would be picking like what's the right lateral area and surface area, what's the right volume. So you'll still have to show the steps, you just won't have to, you'll just in the end select the correct answer. There also could be problems where it's just like maybe it's just the cone and I just ask you to find the lateral area. So it could be a multiple choice problem where it just asks you for lateral area, for example, where you're not actually doing all of the calculations there.